Good evening. It's Sunday, November 28th, 2010. This is Eyes on Media. I want to bring you a couple of quick updates on charts and also a quick look at some really critical stories in the news. This is not going to be something that's in depth. I'm simply going to point you in a direction I think you need to be facing for a moment because there are some very important things going on. And by no means can I cover them all in this very brief podcast. Let's start by looking at the dollar chart. As you know, I use UUP as my dollar tracker. It is the PowerShare US Dollar Index Bullish Fund. Here you can see the chart. Here you can see the little Thanksgiving Day uptick. You can see we're at the top of the stochastics, and we've had something of a little recovery here. The question is what the future holds. If you believe the dollar is going to continue to get strong, that could bode poorly for silver and the stock market, gold in the stock market. If you think that this is a temporary dead cat bounce, then the opposite may be true. I would point out that as we draw this line through here, there is some indication that that downtrend is broken. We do have higher highs, higher lows, another higher high. We have a definite small uptrend in this time frame for the month of really the end of October and November. Important to note that it is in fact an uptrend even if it is short. I will note that stochastics and Williams percent R are at the tops of their ranges, or close to the tops of their ranges, and that indicates that we may have run our course. We also have gapped up. Normal, traditional technical analysis would say we will fill that gap, so I would expect at least on Monday we will be back down into here. What does that mean? Let's look at SPY acting inversely. SPY, which is our indicator for the S&P 500, is in fact down as we would expect it to be in this dollar-driven environment. Here is the S&P 500, again down in the dollar-driven environment, noticing that stochastics is about 1/3 of the way off its bottom. We will go to SLV, and I'm moving quickly here for the sake of time. SLV, interesting chart. I'm going to change this line. I want to pull this line down to here, so I want to show you something that's mildly interesting to me. And that is that we have that line of support, which is, of course, quite a long line of support. As these lines age, they are susceptible to being broken. Oh, they always are, but in this case, we have a big question in front of us which has to do with that declining dollar. We basically have that wedge shape forming. Again, we're a bit of a gap down. I would sort of expect silver to open higher, although I don't mean to forecast or guess that price, but filling gaps is very common. Which side will this break out of? Really is anybody's guess. Longer lines are said to prevail. If the dollar falls some more, I think the longer line would prevail. So I am prepared to remain bullish on silver. Jump over to the SIVR, which is an ETF. It's for the another silver trust. Very similar kind of formation. We'll just take a look at it very briefly. You can see it's following that same pattern. So that's not an anomaly on SLV. That seems to be the basic silver behavior. Gold has a somewhat choppier situation. We have the long run here. We've got our lines here. Yeah, I think I'm going to take a moment and draw this line out just because there's some significance to what's going on. Adjust this there. You notice that this line started out here, and now that would be the line, something of that nature. And we could draw the line there. It's fanning. It's becoming a fan line. Not the strongest thing in the world. Also, I would submit to you, really, and I'm doing this very quickly without looking at the volume. I don't think you can really talk about head and shoulders without discussing volume, but let's look at this. Potentially a shoulder. AGQ, another silver ETF. Yeah, we see the same pattern in silver. So, to me, silver looks stronger. It could still break to the downside. Gold a little choppy, but it's still gold, and we still have a very strange situation with our dollar. I want to point out two other. These are actually ETNs, and you could research the difference between an ETF and an ETN better than I can explain it to you briefly. These are based on Jim Rogers. They are linked to the Rogers International Commodity Index in this case, which is an agriculture total return ETN, as it says here. Notice that we've been having this run. We have a pullback. We have this down here. If you wanted to own either the RJA or the RJN, which is International Commodity Index for energy, this is probably a good time to be buying these. Look where they are down here. Let's touch on USO real quickly. Oil has been kind of a dog lately, but here we have this, and here's that. Let's drag the chart out. At this level, I don't know. It looks to me like we're basing, and I think that for long-term holding, not for speculating, it's just to have 3, 4, 5% of your portfolio in oil might not be a bad thing, and USO is arguably a place to achieve that. I would like to hear other people's opinions on that matter, but that's just mine. What I want to look at real quickly, though, is some things in the news that are very significant. They're significant because while they're political things, politics is driving so much of what's going on in these markets, especially dollar value. Look at tonight's Drudge Report. Classified no more, U.S. races to limit WikiLeaks damage. 250,000 State Department cables cover Iran, North Korea, Putin, and more. They reveal a dangerous standoff with Pakistan. Keep going down the list. The U.S. to reveals Clinton orders U.S. diplomats to spy. Iran obtained missiles from North Korea, and they're capable of striking Europe. China is conducting computer sabotage. I think many of us in the computer trades knew that. Saudis are the chief financiers for Al-Qaeda. Take that and put in your pipe. Reveal. Saudis repeatedly urged U.S. attack on Iran. That's interesting. Senators say prosecute the leakers. New York Times explains the decision to publish. Apparently, New York Times is also republishing what WikiLeaks has published. WikiLeaks turns on Obama. Okay, why is this significant? Well, for one thing, look at what's happening here. Homeland Security seizes domain names. I want to point out that the major issue here is not the domains seized or why, it's the fact that it's being done and who's doing it. The investigative arm of the Homeland Security Department appears to be shutting down websites that facilitate copyright infringement. Now, these websites have not been convicted of anything at this point. They are simply violating copyright law. There is a process in the United States called the court system. It is the way we prosecute cases under the Constitution. I want to point out that this has every appearance of bypassing the Constitution once again. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's known as ICE, which is supposedly managing the borders and illegal immigration, has seized dozens of domain names over the past few days, according to Torrent Freak. ICE appears to be targeting sites that help internet users download copyright music. The issue here is not the copyright music. The issue here is that immigrations is seizing domain names which are accused of breaking the law, but not convicted of it. I want to point out that the First Amendment to the United States requires or guarantees that there'll be no infringement of speech and there'll be no infringement of the freedom of the press. Now, if these sites are going beyond freedom of speech and violating copyright law, they should be found guilty in court and prosecuted that way. If WikiLeaks is functioning as an element of the press, and clearly it is, there should be no law or infringement upon that freedom. I want to point out a very important video that ties some of these things together with money, and that is the Gerald Celente appearance on Gold Seek Radio, November 26, 2010. It is available on YouTube, and I will put that URL, which you can see here, I've just opened up, I'll put that URL in the text below the video here. And lastly, I want to end with a quote of Thomas Jefferson's. There's a whole big page of them, but I'll go to the one specific one. I am for freedom of the press and against all violations of the Constitution, to silence by force and not by reason the complaints or criticisms, just or unjust, of our citizens against the conduct of their agents. And their agents mean politicians, judges, congressmen, and presidents. And Thomas Jefferson said that in 1799. Thank you.